At Experian, we're committed to being carbon neutral in our own operations by 2030. Lots of people use lots of different terminology. People talk about being green, people talk about net zero, people talk about being carbon neutral. But underlying all of this is our fundamental belief that we want to pollute less and have less pollution in our supply chain. Scope 1 emissions are emissions where companies generate their own power, run their own boiler systems. Scope 2 emissions are our emissions related to purchasing electricity. Scope 3 is very much the big one. So Scope 3 covers the emissions in our supply chain, so the emissions that are created by our suppliers. We've already done significant work to cut Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions and move to a renewable energy strategy, and now we're starting on our Scope 3 emissions. It's complicated. There's no doubt that it's complicated. Scope 3 emissions cover our vendors doing compute work on our behalf. It would cover travel and transport that we use, and anything really that isn't directly created by Experian itself. I think there are some vendors in some geographies and at some scales for whom this really isn't something that they've been focused on, and we're trying to work with them to educate them and make them realise it's important, and it's both important to the environment and for a social perspective, but it's also important to Experian and their relationship with Experian. So when we go to ask vendors for costs for goods and services, we also ask them a series of questions on ESG topics. We partnered with a project called the Carbon Disclosure Project, and out of the 200 vendors that we asked to participate, over 100 did so, which for a first year is remarkable. On carbon, we asked them what their plans are, whether they have a science-based target, and whether they're making progress towards this. That information is then used as part of the decision-making process about which vendors we choose to work with. We can definitely be carbon neutral by 2030, but it's going to require everybody pulling together to get there.